Okay, here's the truth. If you are dreading your PhD exams, or if you're super stressed about taking your graduate school exams, then you are definitely approaching them all wrong. So today we are discussing ways to prepare for your graduate exams and different ways to approach them to help relieve a lot of that stress and to hopefully get rid of all of that dread. And first we need to address mentality, because that is literally 90% of the battle that comes with doing your PhD exams. PhD exams or comprehensive exams, qualifying exams are not like other tests. They're not there to just prove how good you are if you know enough. They are actually there to help you as a scholar demonstrate what you already know and to start practicing participating in academic discourse. So instead of seeing this process as an evaluation of all the things you don't know, you should instead see it as your first opportunity as a junior scholar to really showcase all the things that you do know and all the things that excite you most about your research. Also, next, I've said this a lot before, but I'm going to say it again because it's just that important, and that is you cannot know everything. And so you need to accept this so you can release whatever pressure you are putting on top of yourself when you are reading hundreds and hundreds of books, but not retaining every single word, period, or comma that exists within them. Our job as graduate students is not to know everything. In fact, faculty don't know everything. Nobody in academia knows everything. That's why we are researchers. We are actually learning the skills to ask questions, to look into our questions, to evaluate our data, and to create conclusions. Our job as academics is not to know everything. It is to think through things. It's to learn. It's to research. So if you are approaching your PhD exams or your qualifying exams, your academic exams with this pressure, this weight of having to know everything about your field, everything about every book that's on your list, you're going to be overstressed and you're more likely to deal with a lot of confusion and just misdirection when you are preparing for your exams, all because you aren't realizing your job isn't to be omnipotent. Instead, your job is to be able to pick and choose the most important information to help you make your arguments, to help you develop your research, to help you think through and improve the field. So again, when you are approaching your exams, it is not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what you can, knowing it really well, connecting it to your ideas and your research, and communicating it to those who are around you. One more mentality strategy thing that needs to be said. I know it's not ideal, but if you fail, everything will be okay. Now, I'm not saying to start off preparing for exams as if like, I'm gonna fail, whatever. But I am going to say a lot of people fail. Failing is actually really common. And unlike other tests, when you fail your academic exams or your qualifying exams, your comprehensive exams, it's not like it goes on a record or your transcript. But instead, you get an opportunity more times than not to try again. So instead of thinking you have to be perfect on the first try, think about your exams as a process or as an exercise. You are practicing, discussing, and conveying your information, your ideas, your research in an academic way. And sometimes we may not do that so well on the first try. We may not have any idea what that looks like. And so if you don't really know what you're doing, then how likely is it for you to fail? Maybe kind of high. But that doesn't mean that you are a failure or that you're not smart. It just means you're developing a new skill set. I would also say, and I firmly believe this in my soul, if you are a graduate student that fails, that is more a reflection on your committee than you as an individual. It is literally the job of your committee to prepare you for exams. It is literally the job of your committee to make sure you know what academic writing is, give you opportunities to practice it, and give you feedback so you can improve it. So if your exams are the first time that you've ever written in this way and you happen to fail, that is 100% the fault of your faculty mentors. And you need to not internalize that, but instead ask them for more support so when you redo your exams, you can succeed. This isn't to take off an accountability or anything like that. It's just to give you perspective. And it comes down to it, you can't know what to do until you know what to do. And so sometimes it takes us to take the exams and to fail to really know what it takes to succeed. But that does not mean you are not a good graduate student. I guarantee there are a ton of faculty that are probably at your university right now in your department that have failed their exams. you will be okay, you will thrive, and you also don't necessarily have to tell anybody if you don't want to. But okay, now we need to get into strategies so you can stop dreading your PhD exams and feel prepared to take them. And the first strategy that I would suggest, just because like I said, your faculty mentors are so important, is to start meeting with them more often throughout your time that you are preparing. During their prep time, many people do independent studies or join certain reading groups to prepare for their exams. And I think that is a great way to start really easing into the exam process and taking off some of that pressure and a lot of that dread. So much of exams is talking about your research. So if you're in a community, especially with your faculty present, where you're able to talk about your research, talk about your ideas, brainstorm about the readings or unpack the readings in a space where there is a feedback loop, you're able to take notes. What are the things that are sticking to the wall or your faculty seems to positively respond to, and what are the things that they are negatively responding to? And this can be super informal. You can also just meet in their office hours and say, hey, I read this book. I would love to have a conversation with you about it in regards to this, this, and this, or in regards to my thoughts on this part of my research. During these meetings, I highly suggest that you go in there as seeing yourself as the one doing most of the talking. And instead of just talking about the reading, what is the arguments of the author, what are the main tensions or challenges or gaps or this, that, and that, I also encourage you to bring in your own unique ideas about your research, about your thoughts, the challenges that you would bring to these readings, the things that you think are great about these readings. And the reason that is because that's a lot of the intellectual work that you will be doing in your exams. So in these one-on-one conversations, or even in these group conversations, if you are discussing why these readings are important to you and how they connect to your research, and your faculty is responding, again, either positively, neutrally, negatively, you're able to gauge if you are on the right path. Not to mention, if they do respond negatively, you can ask in real time, well, why not? What was the problem? Well, what didn't you like about that statement? And have a dialogue. And during this process, you can take notes. So when you go back to your house or go back to your desk, you're able to think through, okay, these are the thought processes that my faculty mentor is having. These are the ones that I'm having. This is kind of the good, sweet middle spot. Or these are ways that I can address these concerns through this reading or through this other reading or through a contribution of this other thing. You want to actively and dynamically think about your research, the literature, the text that you are consuming, but also the perspectives and concerns and ideas of your faculty. This will also help your exam process go so much smoother because you know what your faculty is kind of looking for, and you can make sure you are tailoring your writing to address those wants and needs. Also, I think it's really important that you take the time to write down the things that your faculty really liked about what you were saying. And I know you're thinking, well, that's kind of a waste of time. No, it's not. Because on a random Wednesday night before you take your exams, when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed, you can look back to your notes and be like, oh yes, they did think I was smart. Ah, that was a good idea. And you can start to feel a wave of calm come over you. Again, so much of graduate school is mental. And so you want to make sure you are also building into your study positive affirmations or moments of positivity that you can consume at a later date. So if you're in these meetings and they're like, oh, that's a real good idea, I would write that down. So-and-so that said this was a real good idea on this date. Keep up with it. That way you can again reaffirm that you are where you're supposed to be and that your exam process is again about what you know. It's not about saying you're not good enough. The next strategy is just to help with the sense of overwhelm. A lot of the dreading that comes with PhD exams is getting a huge list of readings or a huge list of texts and just not knowing where to start. If you're like me and you're somebody who doesn't like to read, it can get even worse of a sensation because you may feel like you will never read everything on your list. And that's actually kind of okay. So what I would suggest for you is to read book reviews or reviews of the text before committing to entire book. I also think it's good to divide and conquer. Label or group your readings into smaller readings, shorter readings, easy reads. So when you're having a bad day and you're feeling stressed about reading, you don't have to open up the world's most dense theory book ever, but instead you can start off with some light reading that still is progressive and still helps you get through the process without the stress of not understanding something. Reading book reviews before committing to a whole book also allows you to make real strategic decisions on what are you going to dedicate your time to and what are you going to dedicate to another time. And this is important because I'm pretty sure you've heard this from other graduate students, and if you haven't, you're gonna hear it from me. Graduate students don't read everything. It's almost impossible to read everything people are telling you, especially if you're not fully funded, if you don't have a stipend, you have to work, you're taking classes, the list goes on and on. Are you raising kids? Do you have a disability? The list continues. And so it's important that when you are doing your exams, you're not putting extra pressure to be a perfect student. Instead, your goal is just to better understand the field. And so reading book reviews or reviews of the texts that you have to evaluate in your exams will give you enough information to know, is this a book I need to read more thoroughly, or do I just need to know the main points that are in this book review and keep it pushing? Now, again, I suggest reading 2 or 3 reviews because they're usually only 1 to 2 pages long, and you can start to see what patterns are in the books or in the reviews that help you understand what are the most important takeaways from the books. But generally, by doing that, you can again focus your time on the readings you think are more connected or important to your research ideas and the things you care about, while still giving attention to the things that have been assigned to you, but you don't necessarily care about and don't necessarily want to give a lot of attention to. And the next strategy that I would give you is to annotate everything. Now, this may at first feel like a lot of extra work, but hear me out. As somebody who did my exams almost exactly a year ago, I've come to the realization that the annotations were so helpful during my exam process that it actually took away a lot of the stress that was going on when I was actually writing. And that's because when you are doing your exam process, there may be points where you're feeling airheaded, like you don't know what's going on, you're a loss for words, or you just have writer's block. But if you have well-written annotations, you can almost literally copy and paste them into your written document for your exams and then zhuzh them up a little bit to help keep the writing process going. And so if you're having a day where you're not writing anything, but instead you have 3 really good annotations, copy paste, you almost have an entire page and a half worth of writing done in a couple of minutes. And so again, creating shortcuts throughout your process can help ease the tension and stress, not just as you're preparing, but as you're writing. So if you're somebody who doesn't write quickly or feels stressed about the writing portion, annotations throughout your reading process, 1, helps you pick out the most important information of all the readings. It helps you connect them to each other. And then it is sort of pre-writing portions of your exams so you can be best prepared for the writing time when you may feel the most stressed or may feel the most tension. There's some support that you are scaffolding into your prep that you know will pay off at the end. Now, I do have entire videos all about annotations, and I highly suggest that you look them up, so I'll put them in the description box and I'll even add one to the end screen. But just remembering that so much of your exam process is about you preparing to talk about your ideas and what you care about. Exams aren't necessarily something that make or break you, so there's also no need to keep a lot of pressure to be perfect. By implementing these quick strategies, annotations, book reviews, and meeting with your faculty, a lot of the unknown or the concerns or the time constraints start to become less and less, and you can even enjoy your exam prep process. So if you're interested in more grad school support or understanding more about grad exams, I would check out this playlist. If you found at least 2 things useful, hit the thumbs up so YouTube will share this video with others who may need it. And as always, your support helps a small YouTuber like me continue to grow. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.